Alright guys, sorry I couldn't be here today, but I did want to go ahead and make sure that you got what you needed as far as your slotted notes, and so we won't get too far behind. Plus, you're still working on your assignment sheets, so this will obviously help out a little bit. Alright guys, our standard today, we're still talking about the reasons the Spanish explored. One of the last reasons the Spanish explored was the Spanish missions. Okay. Basically, guys, we already talked about the fact that De Soto came through Georgia, but he wasn't looking for anything except for gold. And if you'll remember, he failed miserably and died along the way. So we come in with the Spanish missions. Okay. All right, guys, Spanish missions started in 1568. Basically, you have the Spanish who were all Catholics. They were all practicing Catholics. And of course, they wanted to come over here and spread Christianity. They wanted to convert all the natives because, of course, they were heathens, or at least that's what they thought. So, what religion did the Spanish belong to? That would be the Catholic. They were all Catholic. All right? I know y'all are loving my penmanship. All right? And then we would say that the Native Americans were, you really look at the fact that they were considered polytheistic. Those of you who may not know, polytheism is the belief in more than one God, or you can also say polytheism. All right? Basically, guys, a religious mission is nothing more than setting up an area or setting up a small city to do nothing more than to convert a group of people. All right. On the side note, though, a lot of these Spanish missions were actually used to try to gain a lot of use out of these individuals. A lot of them ended up being used for slaves and things like that on different areas in this, like especially in St. Augustine. But basically, guys, we look at the fact that they were used to convert the natives. All right. Now, the Spanish missions in Georgia. Okay. Basically, guys, they settled in all of the barrier islands, most of the barrier islands. Some of the missions actually were on towards the mainland, in an area like the Okefenokee Swamp. Either way, guys, you had two sides of it. You had some natives accepted Catholicism. A lot of them maybe felt like, well, we don't have any other choice, so why not? But then you also have some natives that revolted. This is actually what ends up ultimately leading to the end of the Spanish missions in 16... what was it? Let's see, 1684. But basically, you had a man by the name of Juanillo. He was very upset with what was going on, and he got a bunch of people together, and they attacked, and ultimately end up. But anyway, so this is ultimately what ends up leading to the end of the Spanish missions. A lot of the missions were being attacked by different native groups, and the British actually supported this because if you think about it, I'm sure the British didn't really like the fact that the Spanish were so close to their colonies. So, all right, guys. So those are the barrier islands. Here is another picture that just kind of shows those missions. So. But anyway, so ultimately they end in 1684, and then we have to move on to the English. All right, guys. So here we're going to talk about analyzing the colonial period. All right, the colonial period of Georgia's history. Obviously, now we've got to come in and start talking about the actual colonies that were settled by the English. All right. Eventually, we're going to explain the importance of James Oglethorpe, Charter of 1732, and reasons for settlement. But right now, we've got to kind of get a little bit of background information and background history on the actual colonies that were settled in general. All right. All right. So basically, guys, this is what goes on. Okay. You have, well, apparently this is being a little fidgety, so give me a second. All right. So end up in 1588, the British and the Spanish kind of end up going to war. The Spanish Armada was the Spanish's, which was Spain's navy, and it was really, really good. And basically, finally, the English said, we've had enough of you, and they fought, and somehow the British end up defeating the Spanish Armada. Because of this, England now becomes the world power. Okay. This is a good thing for England because now they are in charge. Spain is kind of going around with their tail tucked between their legs because they've been defeated. All right. This opens up the ability for England to begin to settle those colonies. Okay. And if you'll remember, they settled from Maine to Georgia. So 1600s roll around, and the English began to settle those colonies. Okay. Why did these English colonies begin? All right. Well, you have to have a reason to start setting up colonies. If you think about it, it's kind of like England's the parent, and these colonies are like the kids or the teenagers. Okay. So you have to give them a reason to be able to set themselves up. All right. Well, there's 4 main reasons why the English colonies began. The first was for religious refuge. We talked a little bit about it the other day, the fact that you had lots of people that were trying to get away from the religious persecution by Bloody Mary, okay, which was the queen. So you have a lot of people coming over for that reason. You also have people coming over because England wanted to make economic gains. If you think about it, guys, the colonies were full of resources. All right. They actually started using what was called mercantilism, which is actually a pretty big deal. Mercantilism, the trade policy where England should export more than it imported. All right, guys, this is a big concept here, that they exported more than they imported. If you think about it, guys, if you sell more than you buy, you're going to make more money. And that was the whole concept that they wanted to get at. They have all of these resources now with having these colonies and having this new land that nobody else is a part of. So now they can use those resources. Okay. The third reason why they began was to bring Christianity to the natives. We definitely see that in the fact of people were coming over here for religious refuge. Well, why not, while you're over here, convert those heathen natives? Okay. And then the fourth reason, some people just needed a new start. Okay. A lot of people I know of, and I know me myself, sometimes you just think, dang, I just want to get away. I just want to start over. And hey, why not start brand new in a brand new world? Okay. And so that's what they were looking at. So those were the 4 reasons why they wanted to begin those English colonies. Okay. Next, you've got to look at the fact you have England. Before we had mercantilism, that trade where you import more than you export, or you export more than you import, England had to buy all of their things from other places. They had to import a lot. They had to import cotton, forest products, things to build with, tobacco. They had to import a lot of their foods. All right. Well, after they started settling those colonies, the colonies could produce all of these raw materials and ship them back to England. Okay. Once that happened, England had the ability to export more than it imported, which was a good thing for the country because obviously they're making more money. And who doesn't want to make more money, right? Okay. All right. So here's some examples. All right. You have the Queen of England. She loves dresses made of silk. Well, silk doesn't grow in England because they couldn't, their climate was too cold and too rainy. Well, the climate in the colonies was pretty different from that. So the King George wanted his colonies to produce silk so that way he didn't have to buy it from other countries. Well, what does that mean for the country of England? It's cheaper because now they don't have to buy the silk from other places. They have it themselves, so England saves and makes money off of this. All right, good thing? Yes. Okay, so, but this is kind of going to come into play later when the colonies start getting a little bit upset as the fact that the King of England is almost kind of using the colonies, and they get really upset about it, and it's going to cause some animosity later on down the road. Okay. All right, guys, the original 13 colonies. Okay, remember we settled from Maine to Georgia. Now, the colonies didn't always look like this. All right, and we'll talk more about that later. But the boundaries that they have now are not what they were when they originally started. Okay, here are the original 13 colonies and the year that they were founded. Okay, Georgia right here says 1733. That is because they actually founded it in 1732. They just didn't get here until 33. Okay, if you'll see, Georgia is the baby. Okay, and a lot of these colonies had many years to set themselves up and kind of start becoming more independent from the King of England. Okay, they were here longer. So if you think about it, these colonies are like the older teenagers, your 16, 17, 18-year-olds who were trying their best to be more independent and have the ability to be more independent. Poor little Georgia down here, they're still the baby. Okay, so they're going to end up relying on England a lot more than these colonies. And again, that's going to come into play when we talk about the Revolutionary War and that sort of thing. Okay? All right. The very first colony was Jamestown. Okay? It was founded in 1607. Basically, guys, you have 104 settlers. They arrived, but they arrived pretty late, and they couldn't plant anything. That meant that lots of people died. That left only 38 settlers. Okay, that's not a lot to become more successful or to become successful off of. One of the things that helped them to end up becoming more successful was tobacco. Somebody brought in some tobacco seeds. They started growing it, and at that point, it took off like a wildfire. And Jamestown began to make a lot of money, which obviously made England happy too, because they got that money off of it. Okay. All right, though, even though Jamestown did become pretty successful, something came into the colonies that really, truly helped the economy to flourish, and that was a labor force. You did have indentured servants, and these were people who tried to get over to the New World but didn't necessarily have the money, so they said, look, I will work for you for a set period of time and pay off my debts. Okay. These indentured servants did have rights, especially after they paid their debts. Slaves, on the other hand, did not. They did start using them pretty quickly. They had no rights and basically would spend their entire life in service. Okay, they didn't get paid, none of that. Okay, obviously this ended up leading to a lot of extra money being made because they weren't having to pay someone to work. Okay. All right, guys, that is actually where we are going to stop for the day. We will not start talking about James Oglethorpe and the colony of Georgia until Monday. All right. That does not mean that you cannot work on your assignment sheet. You can use your book. You can use the history packet. Lots of things, lots of resources set aside for you. All right. All right, guys, work hard, and I will see you on Monday.